Warpstone was known to do terrible things to those exposed to it. It could mutate one's cells, making them more chaotic as a result. It was believed among some of the highest scholars of note to be the cause of the Skaven being what they were. What they still were even today. Though considered mythical, they surely did exist, those terrible rat-like creatures that walked on two legs like cruel parodies of humanity's grand design. They looked at each other. There was no turning back. Tobias took a deep breath and shouted, "Follow me!" He ran through the large rectangular room, trying his best to avoid the darkness around him, for the warpstone was the only illumination present, aside from Maestro's glowing staff. As soon as Tobias had entered the room, the pulsing began to speed up, as did the terrible glowing. The pressure in their ears was now terrible. Blood began to trickle from Dieter's ear a little. The others followed close behind Tobias, through the thick and murky pools of darkness that looked like dread tendrils, threatening to pull them down into the ground between the glowing light source and their own shadows moving rapidly. Keeping as close to the wall as they could, Tobias led them to a door which was locked. "No!" he shouted with panic rife in his voice. Tordrad was taking no chances this time. He brought his axe out as he came to the door and brought the great blade against it. Once, twice, 3 times, a 4th, 5 times. The pulsing had become alarmingly fast now. With the vile defensive trap's cut switch not activated, it was out of control. To bring it under control, someone would needed to have uttered a demonic prayer in dark tongue. Only then would the enchantment upon the stone leave it as a relatively harmless glowing light, as long as one didn't step too close to it, that is. 6 times, 7 times the axe bit into the wood, cutting the lock directly out of the door. The Kislevite turned his axe around and smashed at the end of the handle straight into the vulnerable section of wood that his axe had disintegrated in several places. There was a clatter on the opposite side as the lock fell through. Tordrad instinctively pushed the door open and hurriedly fell forwards out of the room. The sound emitted from the stone now was pulsing at a speed that almost sounded like one long tone to the naked ear. The others piled out of the room as fast as they could when the warpstone shard exploded. Pieces of jagged substance flew in a multitude of directions. One struck Tobias in the back of the head, for he was the last one out. He had taken a portion of the explosion too, which pushed his tiny frame forward and out of the door past the rest of the group, before landing face down on the floor beyond. He was not moving. Normally, all eyes would have been upon the halfling's prone form. But there was something a little more distracting for everyone to look at in this new room instead. Everyone but Rysandria, that is, who ignored what the others were looking at and knelt down beside Tobias in an attempt at administering aid in any way she could. The others stared in disbelief at the sight before them. Not even Tordrad could accept what his eyes were seeing. They had emerged into a filth-encrusted underground area, a large chamber that had at the end of it a wide staging platform with a terrible circular metal ring upon it, large enough for something of gigantic size to step through. The centre of the ring-shaped construct was awash with a myriad of twisting energies in a foul vortex that gave them an uneasy feeling when they stared at it, as if something inside was staring back. However, this did not hold their attention for long, compared to the 4 beings present in the room as well. 4 terrible champions of chaos stood before them, fully armoured and armed. Nearest to the crackling gateway on the left side was a terrible man who went by the name of Ch4 of Tzeentch. His yellow eyes were terrible, in a wide open concentration upon the portal before him. Like 2 terrible torches in hell, they glowed with a dark, intelligent magnificence. His dark grey skin was mottled and rough in places. He seemingly wore a cloak of black feathers. He kept his glowing gem-tipped staff as his channeling focus on the portal. his clenched fist outstretched at arm's length towards the intruders without any other part of him regarding their presence. The fingers of that hand opened to reveal a terrible yellow eye inside the palm of the man's hand. It looked at them cruelly, assessing them as a threat. To the right of the portal was another foul creature, this time a female. Soul Flayer of Slaanesh concentrated with all of her mind upon the portal. She was perhaps the most experienced of the four. Certainly she was the oldest. She was beautiful beyond compare. Even Rysandria had to admit her splendour was on another level, like that of a goddess, she thought, then realised her blasphemous thoughts and fought them off to continue treating the halfling. She was divine in her terrible beauty. She too held a staff in one hand, using it to focus channeling energies on the portal. She had 6 arms in total. The others lay at her side, peacefully for now. Down on the floor closer to the group on the left side was an oversized monster of a man, a clear foot taller than the 6'5" height of Tordrad. His muscles were so large that the blood vessels inside his skin could not handle the strain, and had been broken in several places. Here stood the mighty Bonesaw of Khorne, his grisly name seemingly derived from the saw that hung from his belt, though it was not his weapon. It had another purpose. The champion's right arm, shoulder, neck, and face on the right side were all affected similarly by the same mutation, accelerated bone growth. His arm was not a recognizable thing in humanoid terms. Instead of having a hand and fingers, his entire arm was one large lengthy block of bone that would continually grow every single day. If he didn't saw it down regularly, it would grow out of all manageable proportion and soon become too heavy to even lift. What would have been a disability to most men was used as an advantage here. He knew how to make the most of Khorne's dark gift that had been bestowed upon him so gloriously all those years ago. He would use the saw on his crude limb and carve it into the shape of whatever weaponry he fancied wielding at the time. That is why no weapon could be found on his person. He was a weapon. The bone rose up at the shoulder into a jagged needle-like point. The bone of his jaw had grown out of control, bursting through his cheek on the one side. His teeth too had grown as a result, becoming large, misshapen, cracked stumps inside his mouth. He could barely speak, but again he knew that Lord Khorne did not need men for their silver tongues. No words were needed in his service, merely terrible slaughter, skulls in a trophy pile and blood by the river load. He attempted to shout at the group with his booming, hard-to-understand speech impediment. "You are here! Stake your skin!" Lastly, equidistant to the group from Bonesaw, but on the right side, stood another monster of a man, the champion known as Blackrot of Nurgle. His skin was a terrible deathly colour of whitish grey. His nearly bald head had 6 blonde locks of long hair that ran down from the back of it, each an equal distance along the back of his head. His skin was a thick, leathery-looking mess all over. This was all the more horrific at his face, with his mouth and lips even covered by the same substance. His rheumy, bloodshot eyes dripped a dreadful mucus-like dark green substance that ran down his face, casting his features off like a sickening mascara of snot-encrusted filth. It seemed that nearly every vein in his body was at the surface, bulging up close but not able to push past the hardened skin of his body. Every vein was pure black in colour, contrasting frightfully against his pale skin tone, especially across his exposed bald head.